What's up, nerds and nerdettes and wee little nerdlings all? It's your buddy Johnny G for Two Gun Pixie presents Legendary Gaming. Thank you for joining me for this Midday Monologue Monday. And what I'd like to do is continue with some of the werewolf stuff. You've probably guessed that already by seeing the thumbnail, of course. And what I want to talk about today is probably the most important thing about your character, and that's the first change. Now, whether this is played out or whether it is written out, storytelling format way, maybe, it's highly, highly important. This is the most important aspect of Origin, probably in any role-playing game I've ever come across, with the exception of some of the other World of Darkness games like Vampire. Now, first thing I want to talk about this from a storyteller point of view, because I think there are two different mentalities when it comes to the first change. Now, for the storyteller, you're going to have to realize that this is the most pivotal moment in your player's character's life. This is the point where literally reality falls apart on them. But this is the point in their lives when everything changes. Now, some storytellers do enjoy doing this as a role-playing game, adding this in as part of the components. And it does make a great one-on-one. Maybe there's siblings that go through the change at the same time, but let's face facts. In War of the Apocalypse, that's highly, highly unlikely. Maybe it was a sort of breeding ground that a bunch of the kinfolk would raise their children at, hoping that the first change would happen. So maybe there's a couple of different first changes, but really, generally speaking, outside of those extremities, the first change is going to be a solo experience. Now, you and the player are going to have to work out whether this is, whether this is going to be role-played out or whether you're just figuring out what happened in a story format. Because this is the point of your character's life where either something unexpected happened, catching them completely off guard, or this was something that they knew was going to happen. Maybe they were being groomed for it. They were raised in the know by kinfolk. Maybe they're not the result of kinfolk and kinfolk. Maybe they're Garou and kinfolk. Or, hey, if they're Metis, that's going to be a little bit different of a first change story now, isn't it? But, yeah, so you have to be very careful as a DM, as the storyteller here, in setting this up with your players, because this is the point of their life where everything changes. You have to realize that in most cases, they're probably going to be between 14 and 16 years old, unless, of course, in your campaign, you're setting up a later or, God forbid, an earlier change date. You're talking about young teenage kids. Yeah, they're going to be scared shitless because of this, unless, as I said, they were expecting it. They were groomed for this. But yeah, so keep that in mind, that this is the most important part of that player character's backstory in life. Now, again, for the storyteller, please, before you embark on this, especially if this is something that you're going to actually role play, and to a lesser degree, though, but still important if you're just going to storytell your way through it, just talk your way through it, right? But please understand the mechanics of the rules, because this is going to be the first time that your player is going to be probably experiencing this. So you're going to want a good, tight understanding of the rules, especially with the shape changing and with the shifting into the Umbra, because these are things that are going to take the character, again, unless they've been groomed for this, it's going to take them completely by surprise. This is, when it's taken by surprise, this is a horror story for the player. From their point of view, this is a complete horror story. Now, usually there's something that triggers the first change. It's usually quite emotional. And in most cases, it could be very physical also. So what is it? What is it that initiated such a physical and emotional and spiritual change in that character? Now, a lot of times it's going to be something negative. It's going to be maybe a black spiral attack, a Pentek's first team. You know, maybe just another twisted Garou or other shape changer. I mean, God, in the world of darkness is so much to choose from. Maybe a vampire attack on the player's family caused them to go through the first change. Whatever it is, they're going to be caught by surprise, and it's probably going to be a bit of a fight, a bit of a battle. Now, being the fact that they're pups, 0 rank, remember, they're not going to be standing a chance against most other of the true enemies of the Garou. So this is the opportunity to throw things out of control. You know, this is the opportunity where their shape-shifting is still being learned, still being understood. Maybe they change into one shape instead of the other. That's up to you, the storyteller, to decide. Maybe they see their reflection and just shift into the Umbra without knowing what's going on. Now, if they're fighting non-werewolves, this is a really good way to get them out of trouble that they are way, way over their head in. These changes are going to scare the crap out of them. Now, let's just step back for a moment, and let's think the other side of this, because you also have to keep in mind that there's a chance that they knew this was coming. Perhaps they grew up in a compound, or they grew up with friendly kinfolk who were in the know. And most are to some degree, but maybe these kinfolk were really into the know. You know, more than likely, your Garou character is probably from a kinfolk and a Garou. Could be from 2 kinfolk, though. That's true. That could be. So maybe your Garou parent has been looking out for you. Maybe you didn't even know that they were your true parent. They were just some uncle that breezed into the neighborhood every now and then and kind of looked out for you. Gave you some weird little trinkets that you didn't realize were actually fetishes. I mean, that's another way that you can handle all this so that they're not taken quite as by surprise. But remember, it's one thing to have something on your mind, and it's another thing to actually live through this. So odds are that even if they're prepared for a potential first change, prepared to entering the world and the life of the Garou, it could still scare the living crap out of them. Remember, they're not going to be in control of this. More than likely, they're not. That's another reason why it's probably going to scare them. Monsters. Nothing is in your control. Maybe you weren't used to expecting to think the shape change or shift into the Umbra. Yeah, it's going to scare the crap out of your players one way or the other. But this is also the storyteller. This is your chance to help guide them a little bit. Start giving them some information. You know, like maybe while in the Umbra they run into a spirit that's friendly with the Garou. Maybe a Jagling that's associated with one of the Incarna spirits or totem spirits, maybe. Perhaps they run into something friendly that's not a spirit. Maybe they run into another shape changer. You know, not necessarily a Garou, a werewolf. You know, maybe they run into a Korax flying through the Umbra on her black raven wings, and she gives a little bit of advice. There's so many ways that you as a storyteller can play this and just have fun with this part of it, because you're going to have to give the players something for their character to understand. Because remember, player knowledge and character knowledge is different. So give the character something to chew on, so to speak. And I don't mean an enemy or a bone. No, I mean some knowledge, some information to chew on. Dole it out a little bit at a time for the character. That's probably the best way to do it. And then when everything is about to come to a head and the player is worried about their character's safety and everything, then you could throw at them someone from the Sept that's found them finally. Come to fill them in on everything else and take them to their new home and show them what's going on. Now, one other thing for the storyteller to keep in mind is different tribes do handle the first change differently. So I would suggest going through some of the source books for the tribes before the beginning play to understand how each tribe is going to look at, handle, and go through with first changes, and new pups. Now, I want to talk about from the player side, because there's a lot of things that the storyteller needs to think about and worry about that the player's not going to. That's the storyteller's handling that. So yeah, your first change, as I've been saying, is going to be highly important to you. It's going to probably dictate how you react and move forward in Garou society, how you accept it, how you accept yourself. This is going to be very, very important. So work with your storyteller. Even if you're going to be playing it out, not necessarily just talking it out in the story format, if you're going to be playing it out either way, talk to your storyteller first. Throw some ideas at your storyteller. This is what I'm thinking, could be happening to the character with the first change. And work it as a team, because no matter what you are envisioning as a player, trust me, you don't know what your storyteller has in store for the campaign. You don't. So there might be some things that you're unaware of that the storyteller needs out of you and your backstory. So work together. Work together on this. Now, a lot of games really get into the role play aspect. Not just rolling the dice, but roll as in on stage, right? This is a highly role-playing game. It encourages it in every aspect of the game, including encouraging the storyteller to give extra XP to the players that really come to life with this as a role-playing experience. So don't forget that what you know is such as this is just a game. Your character doesn't know. So please play up the fear, the anxiety, how scared you are, confusion of everything that's going on. I mean, even if your character was expecting it to a degree, you haven't experienced it yet. And that makes a huge difference. So don't forget, you want to play this up for your storyteller, for yourself as well. And if there is anyone else at the table, for them. This game is more of a role-playing game, than most other RPGs are. So please embrace it. Ham it up a little bit. Now, having said that, and my players have found this out already themselves, when you're dealing with a game that is so ROLE heavy, like this is, you really are going to benefit from a lot of homework. You call it whatever you want. I call it homework for the players. But studying the source books, the tribe books, in fact, I actually think it's better to have the game described to the players the first time through their tribe book, because it does an excellent job of storytelling through the system of sitting at an elder's feet and learning from them for the first time. And the entire game is built around that feeling, that sensation. So embrace it. Embrace it completely. Go for it. Learn the lore of your tribe. And then later on, you can learn the lore as it's presented in like the core book, or even with other tribes maybe, as you're learning it. But that's even best done through the other players. So you're a child of Gaia and your friend's a Black Fury and the other one over there's a Bone Nora. Just study your own history and let them tell you their tribe's history in their own wordage. It really does add to the whole role play aspect. Now, another thing is, going into this, learn your powers. Know what your powers do. Now, generally speaking, at the start of the game, you got two. If you have a generous storyteller, maybe they've given you a third one. I've done that a couple of times. But that's it. You're not starting with a lot of gifts, a lot of magic powers. That's what gifts are. So the two or maybe three that you have, maybe you buy another one with freebie points. You might have four. But that's you're not going to have a lot more than that to start with, if even that many. So make sure you know your powers, not just because it helps speed up the game and you're not having to go through a book at the last minute, oh, what am I going to do? But no, because this helps you understand what you can and cannot do in the game. It's going to be a huge boon. Trust me, you want to know your powers going into this game. Now, a lot of that is very general information. I want to end this off by zooming in, looking at quickly the 3 different breeds. Now, of course, for the Hamid, those that are born human and become werewolves, this is probably the easiest to be prepared for what is happening because of communication. As I was saying earlier in the beginning of this, maybe you've been groomed for it. Maybe you've been spoken to by kinfolk. Maybe you've heard tales and stories, and those stories are getting you ready, preparing you for the reality of life as a Garu. So the first change, will usually happen anywhere from 12 to 16. I like to say 14 to 16, but you really don't want to go much younger than that in most cases, or much older than that. But have a little fun with it. And remember, these are just kids. They're going to be scared, even if they understand stuff. Now, another breed is lupus. Perhaps you're a Garu because you were born of the wolf. Things are going to be a little bit more difficult for you. Wolf communication isn't as intricate as human communication is. So you're going to be a little bit less prepared. You're also going to scare the crap out of the wolves a bit. And you're eventually going to find out, especially after you go through the first change and stuff, if you stay with that pack of wolves, you're the alpha, but by pure fear. Pure absolute fear they had for you. A monstrosity walking amongst them, even though they know you're generally doing good, but you're a wolf. You're a werewolf. Rage is always right under the surface, waiting to bubble up on you. So they're going to be very scared of you, extremely scared of you. It's going to be a very difficult time as far as emotions go because you're going to feel so ostracized by the other wolves. Now, the third breed, which is the most put down upon, probably has the easiest time, generally speaking. Now, if you're a Metis, born from 2 werewolves, so you were born in your Krynos form, your half werewolf form, your battle form, your rage form, as it's sometimes called, then you know from day one, before you even start understanding and knowing what knowing and understanding is, you know what you are. Metis are treated like crap. They're, in most cases, again, different tribes will treat their Metis differently, especially like the Child of Gaia. A lot differently than the way the Get of Fenris will treat their Metis. But the Metis usually go through their first change around 8 years. I forgot the wolves. The wolves usually go through between 2 and 3 years. I forgot to mention that, sorry. And usually about 8 for the Metis. Now, what really makes things difficult, if you're playing with flaws and merits, which not a lot of storytellers do, but if you are, you got to be very careful about any Metis character that has the metamorph feat ability, because this is going to make things problematic, because it allows you to shift extremely easily between your forms. You don't have to roll for it. You don't have to rage for it. You don't have to spend any resources for it. You can be in any form of the wolves that you want to be in any werewolf form. So when you're a Metis, a born Metis, and you have that merit, it's going to make your childhood and your life extremely difficult. Because by being in Krynos form as a default, alerts hunters, alerts vampires, and the leeches hate werewolves. Now, if they could take out a werewolf when it's a young, basically powerless pup, they're going to do it. Maybe the rat kid will eat on you while you're sleeping. I mean, rats eating babies, that was a huge fear 100 years ago, maybe 120 years ago. So yeah, you have to be very careful when you're born a Metis, especially if you have the merit of metamorph. But those are generally what happens during the first change. It's so unique. There's not a lot I can specify on this. It's going to be unique for the tribe. It's going to be unique for the player. It's going to be unique for the character's situation. But those are some guidelines for you that maybe, hopefully, will help you understand and get through the first change in your game of Werewolf: The Apocalypse.